Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening. I wish to extend a warm welcome to all distinguished guests, both virtual and in person. Thank you for taking the time to join us today. My name is Joshua Angelo Bata, and I will be your moderator for today's Essay Competition Award and launch of the Youth Course. I'm a graduate professional for the Conventional Arms and Ammunition Program, CAP for short, of the United Nations Institute for Disarmament Research. UNIDIR is an independent and autonomous institute within the UN, focusing on disarmament and international security-related issues. UNIDIR promotes the core values of the United Nations: integrity, professionalism, and respect for diversity. As such, UNIDIR is committed to convening diversity in voices and opinions. Nonetheless, the views expressed in the event are the sole responsibility of the individual panelists. These views do not reflect the views or opinions of the United Nations, UNIDIR, its staff members, or sponsors. I am pleased to share with you that we have about 200 registrations at this event. Participants joining as attendees will have their cameras and mics off by design to accommodate the large number of participants. During the question and answer segment, participants are strongly encouraged to post their questions on the Q&A function. Now, without further delay, may I call on Dr. Robin Geis, Director of the UN Institute for Disarmament Research, to give us the opening remarks.
Thank you, Josh. Your Excellency, Ambassador Yoon Sung-mi, colleagues, ladies and gentlemen, thank you all very much for joining us for the launch of UNIDIR's first, and I think first ever, online youth disarmament orientation course, and of course the award ceremony of the Global Disarmament Essay Competition this afternoon. It's a tremendous honor and a great pleasure for UNIDIR to welcome you today at this event. UNIDIR, of course, truly believes in the power of youth and to bring lasting and positive change in arms control and disarmament. It's urgently needed. Our policy in this regard fully aligns with the United Nations Youth 2030 strategy, also the UN General Assembly resolution on youth disarmament and non-proliferation. And I think the Secretary General's disarmament agenda, securing our common future, gets it quite right in stating young people have tremendous force to bring about change in the world, and they have proved their power time and again in support of the cause of disarmament. Indeed, young people have a lot to say about disarmament and global security issues generally, but they're not often heard and even less often listened to. So this is precisely the reason for which UNIDIR has decided to launch this youth engagement program, which we hope will help to promote young people's participation in arms control and disarmament affairs. And as we embarked on this journey, we've been extremely lucky from the start to count on the very strong support of the Republic of Korea. UNIDIR is very thankful to the Republic of Korea for the very generous contribution made to support our work to promote cooperation on disarmament, non-proliferation, and arms control, with a particular focus on youth. Excellency, Ambassador Yoon Sung-mi, I would like to thank you personally and also ask you to please convey our thanks to Seoul and your colleagues here in Geneva for this generous support. UNIDIR greatly values this collaboration, which has extended beyond mere funding, as demonstrated here today by your interest in our activities and your participation in this event. We're very hopeful that this successful partnership will continue in the future. So I'll hand it over to the ambassador very shortly, but let me just reflect very briefly on what has been achieved at UNIDIR over the past couple of months. This year in 2022, through the continuous efforts and tireless contributions from several UNIDIR colleagues, it's been a real team effort. We were able to make notable progress on engaging youth in many different ways. Under the leadership and very active involvement of my deputy director, Dr. Cecile Aptel, we, I think, have achieved an impressive amount of work in record time. And Cecile will provide more details about what has been achieved in her presentation further down the line today. As a result of this work, we're very proud today to be assembled with you to mark two important events. The first is the launch of the interactive multimedia UNIDIR's Youth Disarmament Orientation course. And the second, of course, is the formal introduction of the 3 top winners of the UNIDIR Global Disarmament Essay Competition. My congratulations go to Ms. Layal Algouzi, Ms. Ludovica Castelli, and Ms. Zara Belarache. And I apologize if I've mispronounced any of your names, but important to say that we're very happy to have you with us here today, and we very much look forward to hearing your respective presentations later in the session this afternoon. Thank you all very much for participating today, and now I kindly invite Her Excellency Ambassador Yoon Seung-mi to take the floor, please.
Thank you.
Ambassador, I can't hear you. I'm not sure if that's true for the room as well.
Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Okay, I will start again. Thank you, Ravi, for your kind introduction. I will certainly convey your warm words to our headquarters in Seoul. And good afternoon, everyone. I would like to thank all of you for joining us today. I am so delighted to attend this virtual event to launch the launch of Youth Disarmament course and the successful conclusion of the first essay competition. With a firm belief in the young people as the ultimate force for change and as the champion of Action 38 of the UN Secretary General's disarmament agenda, the Republic of Korea has focused its efforts to empower, engage, and educate youth in the field of disarmament and non-proliferation. In 2021, the ROK and UN co-hosted the Youth Forum on Disarmament and Non-Proliferation, where the Seoul Youth Declaration was adopted by youth representatives from 22 countries across the globe. Also, the ROK led the unanimous adoption of the biannual resolution on youth disarmament and non-proliferation at the first committee of the UN General Assembly in 2019 and last year. We believe that it is essential to provide opportunities to the youth so that they can take part in key disarmament discussions, not only as beneficiaries, but as important stakeholders to save future generations from the scourge of war. This is the very first line in the preamble of the UN Charter. In this sense, the ROK and the UNIDIR launched the Youth Engagement Program, including Global Youth Disarmament Essay Competition and Youth Disarmament Course, which aims to further the diversity and sustainability of discussions in the field of disarmament and non-proliferation. In closing, I'd like to express my appreciation for the efforts and passions of all participants to the UNIDIR Youth Engagement Program. Also, I would like to send my warmest congratulations to the winners of the essay competition. I am confident that your talents, fresh ideas, and your genuine interest in global agendas will contribute to our collective efforts towards building a safe world. I thank you.
Many thanks indeed, Ambassador Yoon. My name is Cécile Aptel. I'm the Deputy Director, and I would like to thank you very much, Ambassador, as well as the Republic of Korea and Dr. Geis for your very enlightened and positive remarks. Dear participants, thank you all for joining us and a very warm welcome to this program. UNIDIR's Youth Engagement Program seeks to promote young people's participations in arms control and disarmament affairs, which is in line with the recommendations from the Advisory Board on Disarmament Matters to UNIDIR, and to not only commit our additional efforts to engage the general public, but also to support initiatives which emphasize engaging youth on disarmament matters. So 2022 has been a very fruitful year for our youth engagement programs, with a very strong collective effort from all UNIDIR's research programs and researchers and staff. Please allow me to present the 4 main components of our youth engagement work, which you can see on the slide being projected, and the progress we have made in just under 1 year. I will go through these 4 components in turn, starting with the UNIDIR Graduate Professional Program. This is now a well-established program that allows UNIDIR to build disarmament research capacity among young people, help graduate students gain exposure to the Institute and the United Nations as a whole, and enhance their educational experience and gain experience in UNIDIR's work on disarmament, arms control, and non-proliferation. This year, we have achieved new milestones, both in terms of gender balance and geographical diversity. In these programs, UNIDIR has received a large number of 24 graduate professionals at the end of a very selective, fair and transparent recruitment process. And so those 24 graduate professionals represent 15 countries from Europe, Asia, Africa, North and South America. Among them, 15 were female and 9 male, achieving the goal of gender parity with a composition of 62% female among our GPPs. The second component is the Model UN Conference, the Model United Nations Conference. This was done in close partnerships with the Permanent Mission of the Republic of Korea and the Geneva International Module UN on the 4th and 5th of May this year. Over the course of 2 days, 60 student delegates engaged in active and substantive discussions on the topic of space security and presented a draft resolution calling for a ban on the development and use of anti-satellite weapons and establishing cooperation on space exploration between private actors and international organizations. With UNIDIR's strong engagement, the participants were able to interact closely with UNIDIR experts working on all this topic, and I would like to really thank all of our space experts to have worked on this. The third of the 4 models components is the Youth Disarmament Essay Competition. And as part of that, UNIDIR invited young students and researchers to write a 2,000-word essay addressing the disarmament, security, and development nexus. We received excellent feedback from young students and academia about the opportunity to share thoughts on the topic. We had participants from 38 countries that set us a total of 121 essays that satisfied the competition's criteria. After 2 rounds of internal review by UNIDIR researchers, as well as also external reviewer, the top 5 best essays were selected, and we're very happy to have today the authors of the top 3 essays. Congratulations to you, and my colleague Mathilde will say more about this and introduce these 3 promising young talents a bit later. Last but not least, the 4th component of UNIDIR's youth engagement is the online Youth Disarmament Orientation course. It is a particularly proud moment to formally launch this course today after months of hard work. And I'm very proud to launch this course today alongside Dr. Geis and you, Ambassador Yoon, and of course, all colleagues here. This e-learning modular course is available free of charge to all young people around the world through the UNIDIR website. It consists of 6 interactive, self-paced course modules on a range of very important and topical subjects, plus also a number of related interview videos with UNIDIR young professionals and a list of additional resources, and last but not least, a self-test. We prepared a short launch video of this course, and I would like to invite us all to watch this right now. Thank you.
The need for disarmament is as urgent as ever, but the threats we face are always changing. From nuclear weapons and the millions of guns spread all over the world, to artificial intelligence, cyber attacks, and space debris. 50% of the global population is under 30, but the same is true of only 2.8% of our elected politicians, and 1 in 4 young people around the world is affected by violence or armed conflict. The voices of these young people need to be heard, because the actions we take today will shape the world we live in tomorrow. That's why UNIDIR, with the support of the Republic of Korea, has created a new online course to help young people understand the key disarmament issues, get informed, get involved, and help us build a more secure, more peaceful tomorrow. Take the UNIDIR Youth Disarmament course at unidir.org/youth-disarm. The need for
With this, I am very happy to announce that this youth disarmament orientation course is now live on the UNIDIR's official website, and you can access it. This is not a small achievement to design a new course, and so I would like to thank all the many UNIDIR colleagues who have participated in this collective endeavor, and there are too many to name everyone, but with so much expertise and also so much commitment. So many thanks indeed to everyone. And I will now give the floor to Mr. Liu Chen, who is UNIDIR's graduate professional on youth, who played a key role in getting us also to this stage of launching this course today, and who will provide more details on the course. Again, a very warm thank you to everyone, and thank you more than anything to Ambassador Yoon and the Republic of Korea for making this possible. Liu, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Dr. Aptel. Greetings to everyone joining us today. My name is Liu Chen, and I work at UNIDIR as a graduate professional for youth, mainly responsible for coordinating the development of UNIDIR's Youth Disarmament Orientation course. UNIDIR Youth Disarmament Orientation course is specifically developed for a young audience from all regions of the world to introduce them to the disarmament agenda. The primary goals of the course are to provide accurate and up-to-date knowledge and information on disarmament and arms and control affairs, and facilitate self-learning and further research on relevant topics. UNIDIR's message to all of you, all the young people, is that youth's engagement with the disarmament agenda is heartily welcomed, and we need the voices of youth to contribute meaningfully to disarmament debates. With these goals in mind, we have carefully prepared engaging and digestible contents for our audience to learn and explore. Upon finishing the course, youth will obtain a basic understanding of the terms, concepts, and topics associated with disarmament and arms control. We also hope that taking this course will be the starting point for many young people's future journey with disarmament. The Youth Disarmament Orientation course consists of 6 self-paced online e-learning modules. They cover specific topics ranging from weapons of mass destruction, space and missiles, to small arms and light weapons, artificial intelligence and autonomy, and cybersecurity. Each module introduces key concepts, relevant international treaties, and other information on the topic. Each module also provides a gender perspective on its covered topic and features dedicated contents on gender-related materials. And finally, UNIDIR Youth Disarmament Orientation course has more to offer than the modules themselves. Along with each module, we have also provided an interview with our young professionals here at UNIDIR working on the topic, so they can listen to their perspective as young people as they answer questions related to disarmament. The course also comes with a comprehensive list of additional resources for every module. This list contains all the latest publications by UNIDIR and other UN entities on topics covered in our course, official sites for international treaties and mechanisms mentioned in the course, as well as additional educational resources. This provides the possibility for those taking the course to further their learning journey. There's also an optional self-test that youth can take when they reach the end of our course to check their knowledge. As a young person myself, I have a rewarding journey working on the development of this course. I'm also deeply humbled and awed by the diversity of issues covered by disarmament agenda. Disarmament particularly matters to us young people because it's actively shaping our future for everybody. My introduction for the course concludes here. You can now access our launch course, this Youth Disarmament Orientation course at UNIDIR's official website. We hope you like it and find it useful, and we look forward to hearing your feedbacks. I will now give the floor to my colleague Mathilde to introduce the essay competition.
Thank you, Leo, and hello, everyone. Thank you for joining us today. So this opened the second section of today's youth event. So I would not want to repeat Cecile's words. I'll be very brief. I am Matilde Vecchioni. I am the program assistant at the Conventional Arms and Ammunition Program, and I'll give a brief introduction to the Disarmament Essay Competition before giving the floor to our panelists today. So firstly, let me congratulate you again, both Layal and Zara that are here in person, and Ludovica, Andre, and Zino connected online. My compliments for your insightful essays submitted for this competition. As Cecile mentioned, we received 121 essays from 38 different countries. So we had an external and an internal panel of reviewers. The selection was very thorough, very complicated, given to the high quality of your submissions. Your 5 essays were selected as the best ones. In the next slide, you will see the names and titles of the essays for the 5 winners. As you can see, the topics are highly variated and cover a broad spectrum of issues that are not only highly relevant to these disarmament-related discussions today, but also highly relevant to UNIDIR's work. This is why we're delighted to hear today from the 3 top-placed winners, who will provide us with a presentation of their work. Before giving you the floor, I'm delighted to share that the best 5 essays have been gathered in a UNIDIR publication, the Essay Compendium, which will be launched today on our website. So I'll share the link in the chat in a second, but this is the publication that you will find from today online on UNIDIR's website. As I hope this will be a very insightful discussion, I also welcome everyone online to post their question in the Q&A function. As time permits, we will relay the questions to the panelists in the room and online. Should any question remain unanswered, we'll be happy to follow up bilaterally with those of you that are interested. Let me conclude by thanking everyone for being with us today. The internal and external reviewers for their support throughout the process, and then the UNIDIR team who worked on this initiative, especially Josh, Ruben, and Larissa for their support. With this, it's my pleasure to give the floor to our first placed winner, Layal, who's with us in the room. Layal, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Matilda. And just before I start, I just wanted to thank UNIDIR, of course, and the Republic of Korea for your support carrying out this wonderful initiative, and also my fellow essay writers. Without you, this wouldn't be possible, so thank you for that. So we've been here in Geneva for a couple of days where we were able to meet some of UNIDIR's members, and we've had some very meaningful and fruitful conversations discussing some of the challenges of disarmament, which both made me feel hopeful and quite frustrated, because I'm sure that I'm excited that the young generation and people like myself and Zara and the other winners of this essay competition have a lot of work to do in the future. So that keeps me motivated. I think it's also important to really engage youth on real policy matters and like discussions that are taking place that will and do affect people on the ground. So thank you again for this opportunity. The theme for this year's competition is very timely, it's very relevant. I don't think you can really separate disarmament from development. I think they're mutually reinforcing. And they both tend to focus on the element of human security that is sometimes lacking when it comes to contemporary armed conflicts. So the situation that's happening right now is really most contemporary armed conflicts take place in urban and densely populated areas where a lot of explosive weapons are used, contrary to the basic and rudimentary principles of humanitarian law, those being the principles of distinction, proportionality, and precaution. And these urban areas that are surrounded as civilian bound are usually where the civilians are actually disproportionately harmed in these situations, both in an immediate sense, the direct harm that they are subject to, but also in the long-term sense and the reverberating effects that take place, especially as a lot of critical civilian infrastructures are destroyed by the use of these explosive weapons. So, and this really sets back the development goals and really hinders sustainable development, affecting, Sustainable Development Goal 3, for example, on good health and quality education, which is 4, and of course, this is a real issue that's facing us today. You've seen the situation in Gaza, you've seen the situation in the protracted conflict in Syria, and of course, more recently in Ukraine. Yemen is, not doing very well. It's one of the worstly affected situations in the world. And I can go on and on about all of these situations that are taking place. Yemen in particular is actually facing a water security issue in and of itself, which is really, it's compounded by the use of these weapons, including missiles and airborne campaigns, mortars and rockets and shellings, IEDs as well, which really exacerbates the problem that they're already facing, which is already compounded by climate change. So it's just one issue after another after another. And so when these water facilities are destroyed or these hospitals and schools are destroyed, people are not, like, it's very hard for people to come back and to continue their development in a way that provides them with human dignity. So this is a real issue that we're facing in contemporary conflicts. But I think an important issue to discuss as well that ties in with all of this is the real problem, which I see as the lack of compliance and non-enforcement of the very basic rules that dictate the governance of the laws of armed conflict. Because, okay, yes, there is no current prohibition or disarmament measures that outlaw the use of explosive weapons in densely populated areas. I mean, okay, we have the Landmine Convention and the Cluster Munitions Convention, but I think the issue that really underlies all of this is the lack of compliance. And the point of it is to encourage and educate both states and non-state armed groups that are engaged in armed conflict on the long-term effects and the reverberating effects of using these types of weapons in such densely populated areas. And it's not just the urban populations, it's also the congested and tightly packed groups of refugees and IDP camps that are often victims of air campaigns and missile attacks and so forth. So yeah, so the growing disregard for the laws of armed conflict means that objects indispensable to the civilian population are again and again deliberately targeted or often incidentally targeted as a result. And these very well-defined principles, as I mentioned, distinction, proportionality, and precaution should be the priority. So yeah, to conclude very shortly, I think there needs to be a cultural shift in attitude between states and non-state armed groups. I do think that, there is something to be celebrated. Just recently in November, there was a political declaration that was adopted, and I believe it was signed by 83 states, discussing the impacts of the explosive weapons in densely populated areas. So I think states we should really focus on this and try to build momentum from this situation and try to look at other soft law measures and other guiding principles or declarations that we can jump on and try to keep this issue at the forefront in order to protect civilians as much as we could. So I tried to be brief, but I'm happy to cover any questions and answers after. Thank you.
Thank you, Layal. That was very, very interesting. I see we have a question in the room. I would also like to flag to online participants, if you have any questions on the previous presentation on the course, as I saw there was one, please put them in the chat and my colleague Leo will follow up with you on the chat. So thanks a lot. I'll now give the floor to Clara in the room for her question to Layal. Thank you.
Thank you, Matilde, and thank you, Layal. This was very interesting, and congratulations again. So my question is, beyond acting according to the political declaration, what can states do to counter the use of the WIPA? Thanks.
Thank you, Clara. I think on a very simple level, dissemination of IHL principles, dissemination of the rules of war, educating, training soldiers, joint exercises, lessons learned, evaluation of lessons learned. I think that's like a very positive step forward. I also think like political declarations in and of themselves are, well, I think they're an effective tool at signaling to the other parties that this is an issue, this is a priority, that we do care about this issue. So I think like continuing on this momentum and trying to push forward the already existing, principles that are in place is the way forward. Thank you.
Thank you, Clara, and thank you, Layal. So I don't see any question online for the moment. Should there be any at any other stage, please don't hesitate to post those. So now I'm happy to give the floor to Ludovica, who's with us online. Ludovica, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Matilde. I'll try to share my screen. Can you hear me, right?
Yes, we can hear you.
Okay. Okay. Can you see it properly?
Yes, we can see your screen. Thank you.
Okay, perfect. Well, first of all, as I'm going to reiterate what Layal said, thank you for inviting me today. It's an honor and a great pleasure to present my essay here, even if not in person. Alice, unfortunately, I couldn't be here, but I really hope I will be able to visit soon. Also, big thank you to Matilde and Joshua, who have been extremely available and flexible in setting up everything in this ceremony. So my reflection, from which my essay originates, arises from an empirical observation and a sort of reinterpretation of a traditional concept. And I will start from the latter. So traditionally, the importance of disarmament has been considered and framed as a bridge towards more sustainable socioeconomic development. And here the relationship is outlined as causal and unidirectional, with the latter being a positive byproduct of the former. And this has also been reiterated in the 2030 agenda, which aims at, and I quote, bringing the historical relationship between disarmament and development to the forefront of international consciousness. So while there is no doubt that the least diversion of the world's economic and human resources to arms and nuclear weapons also positively impacts economic growth, I think it's most overlooked is, I think, how the concept of sustainable development might play a critical role in promoting and achieving the goal of disarmament. In other words, disarmament and development in a bi-directional causal relationship in which development is not just a positive byproduct, but also and mostly a motivating factor encouraging states to engage and commit to disarmament. And here a specific concept is key, the concept of human security, which basically is an academic paradigm which emerged after Cold War to properly challenge state-centric views of international politics, but also the traditional paradigms of peace and security in favor of a more holistic perspective, which involves multiple individual-centric dynamics, which can be climate change, energy security, environmental security, food security, and so on and so forth. And here it comes the empirical observation. So if we look at the attitude of states, especially non-BRICS states of the global south, vis-a-vis disarmament, and especially here the CPNW accession, we can see how human security interests are increasingly important and critical in the decision to legally and actively commit to this goal. The global south represents, if we look at the TPNW, a big chunk of the total signatures and ratifications of the TPNW. Additionally, most of these regions are also in nuclear weapons-free zones, which of course are regions in which states have committed to not to manufacture, possess, acquire, test nuclear weapons. And as a consequence, the states' adherence to TPNW has been viewed mostly as an additional reiteration of their already existing commitment to disarmament. Nonetheless, of course, while being vocal supporters of disarmament, many of these states carefully calculated the potential costs and benefits of signing and ratifying such a treaty. And just as socio-economical considerations, for example, in the form of assistance and promotion of nuclear technology, were central in developing countries' decision to embrace the NPT in the 60s, the TPNW's reiteration of the inalienable right to peaceful uses of nuclear energy has been a key factor in achieving such success. And this is really clear from the negotiating process. The TPNW formula runs on similar mechanisms. In fact, we could say that this preamble basically acts as a written guarantee that Article 4 of the NPT would not be affected by the signing of the TPNW, which emphasizes the disarmament pledge while securing access to technology. And this specification is very, very relevant when it comes to the calculations that developing countries make before signing a treaty, which strikes a crucial compromise between securing access to technology while pushing for disarmament. And the ratio of such compromise can be found in the increasing convergence between nuclear disarmament, nuclear energy, and climate change. There is growing acceptance now that nuclear technology might be part of the solution to the climate crisis, and also a key tool in promoting nuclear disarmament. So in this light, it's not surprising that a specific category of countries which are prone to disarmament and eager for nuclear energy has chosen to embrace the TPNW. Many of these states are currently faced with a double imperative of, the first is, of course, improving energy security, and the second is promoting an energy transition that favors climate change policy needs. This is especially true for non-OECD countries, which account for about 60% of the world's electricity consumption, very, very highly dependent on fossil fuels, and and as a consequence, responsible for 2/3 of global CO2 emissions, and most importantly, whose energy demand is expected to grow much faster than that of developed countries due to, of course, demographic growth, economic growth, and blah, blah, blah. So among the 30 states planning, or contemplating nuclear power programs, the majority of them, we can see, are in Central Southern Africa, Middle East, Central South America, or Central Southeast Asia. The most recent projection provided by the IAEA show higher trends compared to the previous years, which of course reflect the growing recognition that of climate change challenges and of the increasingly accepted role of nuclear energy in reducing emissions, but also the gradual adoption of a strategy to deal with future trends in world energy consumptions. So it follows that sustainable development in the form of nuclear energy emerges today as an increasingly powerful potential driving force behind the quest for nuclear disarmament. In other words, the entanglement between nuclear energy, disarmament, and human security offers a good basis upon which to craft a new strategy aimed at incentivizing states toward disarmament. The TPNW, as I tried to show, is a case in point. As previously stated, developing countries have primarily viewed this treaty as a matter of socioeconomic developmental interest, at the heart of which stands access to nuclear technology with its many applications, agriculture, industry, medicine, and so on and so forth. So their decision to sign and to ratify have first and foremost depended on whether they perceived the process itself and the treaty concluded as enhancing such interest, or at least as not undermining them. And this rationale might provide disarmament supporters and advocates with a key to achieving broader TPNW membership. and more broadly, a greater propensity to support the disarmament path. And I will stop here.
Thank you, Ludovica. Thank you very much for your presentation. That was very, very interesting to hear, despite having written your essay. It was great to hear it from you. So if you don't mind, I'll keep the question to the end, because I've seen there are some in the chat that speak a bit to the different presentations. So if that's okay for you, I'll just let Zara present, and then we keep a bit of time at the end to address some of the questions in the chat if we have time. Thank you.
Okay.
Zara.
Good afternoon, everyone, and thank you for having me here. Thank you in particular to UNIDIR and the Republic of Korea for the great opportunity. And also thank you, Layal and Ludovica, for the introductory remarks, on which I completely agree. Well, I focused my essay on a gender perspective on disarmament. Slide, please. Because when we think about women in wars, we usually have in mind images like this one. Women that are suffering, crying, that are helped to escape, like in the second slide. Women and girls that are victims of war, basically. Slide, please. But if we take into consideration, for example, the Soviet-Afghan War, we hardly remember that there was a female battalion on the People's Militia. Slide, please. And we are probably not aware of the existence of the Bajali el-Zahra female militia during the Iranian Revolution of 1979. Slide. And if we think about the Mercy tribes in Ethiopia, this kind of photo is not the first thing that comes into our mind. Slide, please. And when talking about the crimes committed in Liberia and Sierra Leone, we will hardly realize that 30% of the child soldiers engaged in the conflict were actually girls. All this is because war is still considered an entirely male industry, where women are traditionally perceived as passive, fragile subjects that depend on women. However, they can be fighters, agents of violence. They can consciously engage in the perpetration of violence, even if this narrative is still not widely accepted. Slide, please. We can understand this from different examples, and the implementation of the UN Security Council Resolution 1325 on women, peace, and security is one of them. Interestingly, Resolution 1325 and the relative agenda are based on 4 pillars: protection, prevention, relief and recovery, and participation. And unsurprisingly, the less implemented pillar is the participation one, also despite what is provided by Sustainable Development Goal 5. Further, also the executive director of the UN entity for gender equality and the empowerment of women acknowledged that the United Nations' inability to empower women by including them in peace-building processes as participants, signatories, and mediators. Accordingly, in my essay, I tried to understand which are the deep factors that contribute to female ex-combatants' exclusion from peace talkings, and ultimately disarmament, demobilization, and reintegration programs. And I took the example of Sierra Leone. Slide, please. To make this a little bit more immediate, I reported a part of an interview with a former female combatant of the Revolutionary United Front, a rebel group that fought in Sierra Leone in the 90s. So she said, "It is true that I fought with the RUF. I fought alongside the top rebels. I led several successful reconnaissance missions. But when the war came to an end, because some of the men who had forced me to have sex with them were in the disarmament camp, I did not go for the DDR process. Instead, I chose to stay away. Since I did not get there, I registered with the government as a war victim of sexual abuse, but nobody has come to help me. So this peace is a victory for the rebel men. They are the winners and the women, the losers. Slide, please. What this woman witnessed reflects the main factors of women's exclusions in peace negotiations and DDR programs that have been highlighted by some IR feminist scholars, meaning agency, hierarchy, intersectionality, and patriarchy. Concerning the first aspect, agency, it is sometimes compared to the women victimhood myth, according to which women and girls are usually considered only as victims that are not capable of intentionally committing acts of violence, so being soldiers. For instance, during the DDR process in Sierra Leone, rebel groups willing to avoid stigma for recruiting and employing child soldiers labeled girl soldiers as unaccompanied children, preventing them from participating in DDR. Another relevant factor is the hierarchical division of labor in armed groups, which is usually fluid, like in the case of Sierra Leone, where women in militia groups shared guns with male combatants. But DDR analysts usually still refer to the combatant, non-combatant dichotomy and tend to misidentify women's role during a conflict. In other words, only rebels who used arms benefit from the DDR projects. And since women are hardly defined as such, they are basically excluded. Further, women's demobilization policies rarely take into account the intersectionality of gender, race, ethnicity, or class. In Sierra Leone, many female combatants, for example, missed important ceremonies to become adults due to the war. Accordingly, while they were considered adults by international agency, since they achieved the legal age, they and their communities still considered themselves children. Last but not least, for what concerns the patriarchal dynamics in post-conflict processes, enlightening is once again the case of Sierra Leone, where the DDR process included policies concerning the conjugal order, which forced women and girls to stay silent on sexual violence episodes, such as rape, and led the government not to warn that girls were avoiding DDR to self-demobilize. Also, frequently, rebels commanders prevented women in their army to receive DDR benefits, but taking guns away from them when the conflict came to an end, to replicate the pre-conflict gender norms and androcentric status quo ante. All these factors force female ex-combatants to self-demobilize also through prostitution, due to first, the lack of job opportunities and successful job training programs for women, and second, for the relevant demand for sex work during post-conflict contests. Slide, please. So, to conclude, there is an absolute and urgent need for more inclusive and effective peace agreements and DDR processes, as research suggests that including women from both sides of a conflict in peace processes produces more successful results than in previous settlements, as happened in Colombia, where gender subcommissions made of both FARC female ex-combatants and female national government's personnel were included in the Havana peace talks after the conclusion of the FARC war. So, thank you.
Thanks a lot, Zara, for this very, very interesting presentation. I think we have some questions in the chat. Since we're on time, I would not want to necessarily address them all. As we said, we will follow up personally if then the panelists have time after the event to reply to them. I think a couple of them are interesting. So if Layal is okay with that, I think we can address a couple. I think they are referring to your presentation, so maybe we can address those. So we have a question in the chat asking how can member states act towards existing inequalities such as socially excluded, internally displaced, victims of war, vulnerable populations, and promote their participation in disarmament discussions. I think this can speak to your topics. If you're comfortable replying, we're happy to hear your insights.
Sure, and thank you, guys, for your questions out there. I think just to answer your question, I think a lot of it has to come from the political will of these member states that you're referring to, and including certain disenfranchised groups in these discussions, whether that's through giving them a platform on a domestic level or like an international level to speak about these issues. So just to link in Zahra's point about UN Security Council Resolution 1325 on women, like this is just to bring it to life as an example of states recently taking action towards bringing female voices, for example, to the discussion, and specifically like in the Middle East, I know that like there are some national action plans that are going to be implemented by Iraq, Yemen, and recently UAE. So I think the point I'm trying to make is there is some progress, there is some discussions on how to include disenfranchised voices. And in this particular instance, I bring up UN Security Resolution 1325 to bring the point that people are, at least these women in these situations, have been, trying to become part of the discussion, the larger discussion on disarmament and post-conflict reconstruction. So I would hope that member states would also allow, other existing social groups to also contribute. I don't know if that answered the question, but
I'm sure it did. If it didn't, we welcome, of course, follow-ups to that. I don't know if Zara, you would want to jump in since she mentioned your presentation, if you would like to add anything on your side since they're pretty interconnected points.
Just one quick follow-up of what you said, Layal. I truly believe that like including female experts on the field, like people that comes from the regions where everything is happening in the designing of whatever policy that is needed to solve a particular problem, which could be post-conflict reconstruction, peace building, state building, or climate change crisis, considering, women that are there and know how things are going, and inviting them before like the process is ongoing, but when the process is designed would be a huge a huge impact, as like happened in Colombia, I guess.
I just want to jump in as well, sorry. Just to reiterate that, as much as we would like to see progress being made like immediately, we need this to move somewhere. I think a lot of the frustration really stems from the fact that these processes take time. Unfortunately, that's not good enough given, real people are being affected on a day-to-day basis. But I try to be an optimist and believe that some member states are maybe beginning to look at different perspectives. I know that the several NGOs and humanitarian organizations have tried to bring light to these topics, and especially disenfranchised groups. The ICRC has several publications on disabled members. They've, interviewed people who are victims of war and try to let them really tell their story. And hopefully one day this will transform into, effective and immediate progress for disarmament measures.
Indeed, thanks a lot, both. If you don't mind, I have just one last question that I think it's interesting for Layal, and I would want to give you the chance of responding if you'd like. And then please, Ludovica, Zara, feel free to jump in with any additional points, as I know your area of expertise is probably not just your essay. So please just flag it to me. We have a second question regarding, it was mentioned that population density also contributes towards violence. So gradually controlling density in highly populated areas could prove to decrease violent and promote disarmament activities. Is this somewhat a correct statement?
Um,
Would you like to respond?
So I find it interesting, and thank you, Mathilde, and thank you for asking this question. So I agree to an extent that resource distribution, and like yes, the world is overpopulated, but I don't think that this directly affects the situation that I'm seeing, or at least the way I interpret it, which is actually a lot of states and non-state armed groups deliberately target populations. They deliberately target civilians in order to demoralize the other belligerent parties. So whether or not like the population density decreases, I think the issue will still remain, which is a lack of respect for IHL and just blatant violations. I think, yeah, I mean, it could be one control measure to sort of at least ease the pressure on this, like the society that's handling, like all of the resources. But if I were to answer this question, like in one sentence, I would say it really depends on a lot of things, and even like the destructive radius of the type of weapon, it's a lot. So unclear answer, but I do think, yeah, it could maybe help, just not directly.
Thank you. Thanks a lot. I hope for everyone online that replied to your question. I'll just check quickly if there's any question in the room to the three panelists. And otherwise, I would just like to mention that unfortunately our director is not here, but on your behalf, Dr. Guys, I'm going to give after the ceremony the award certificate to our winners. And Ludovica, Andre, and Zino will be happy of emailing those to you, unfortunately. But if you ever come to Geneva and have the opportunity to meet the team, we will be happy to meet you in person and do that live at the office as we did for Yal and Zara. Thanks a lot. So with this concludes my section of today's event. Thanks a lot again for your presentations. And I give back the floor to Josh for some final remarks. Thanks a lot.
Yeah, thank you, Mathilde. Let me just express my deepest gratitude for all participants who connected virtually and at the same time those who were in the room today. I thank the essay winners for being here, Leia Alcuzi, Ludovica Castelli, Zarabel Araque, Andre Araniega, and Zina Ruz for their inspiring work and great presentation. Finally, I thank the Ambassador Yoon Song Mi for unwavering support and for joining us today. So today's event is recorded and this will be available in UNIDIR's social media shortly. So thank you so much, everyone, for joining us today, and this wraps us our session. Thank you.
Thank you.